The calculator display blinked at me like a digital heartbeat. $799. Who pays that much for a calculator? I tapped the sleek metal case, wondering if it was made of pure silver or just pretension. The TI Advanced does everything except your taxes, a warm voice said behind me. Though I bet you could program it to try. I turned to find a tall man in a charcoal suit, his smile genuine enough to make my cynicism stutter. For this price, it better do my laundry too. I'm Ryan, he said, picking up the calculator. And I'd say this is more of a third-date purchase. You know, after you're sure they're worth the investment. Peyton, I replied, watching him examine the ridiculous price tag. And I prefer to audit my relationships before making any major acquisitions. His laugh echoed through the electronics store, drawing curious glances. An auditor? That explains the calculator's shopping. Though I have to say, most auditors I've met don't have such a sharp sense of humor. Most production directors I've met don't hang out in calculator aisles, hitting on women. I raised an eyebrow, noting his company ID badge. Guilty as charged. He set the calculator down. Bennett Electronics. Family business. Though right now, I'd rather talk about coffee than spreadsheets. I should have said no. My last relationship ended in a spreadsheet, specifically, a detailed accounting of his infidelities that I'd compiled over 3 months. But something in Ryan's eyes made me pause, made me wonder if maybe some risks were worth taking. Coffee sounds good, I heard myself say. But I should warn you, I notice everything. Perfect. He gestured toward the store exit. Because I have nothing to hide. 2 hours later, sitting in a corner cafe, I realized how dangerous those words were. Ryan talked about his family's company with pride, about his father Thomas, who built it from nothing. About his mother Laura, who kept everyone grounded. But when he mentioned his sister Jenna, something shifted in his voice. She's brilliant, he said, stirring his third coffee. Handles all our procurement. Dad says she's got his business sense. But? I prompted, recognizing the hesitation. But nothing. He smiled too quickly. Tell me more about your work. What made you choose auditing? I let him change the subject, filing away that moment of discomfort. I like puzzles, I said. Numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers? They always tell the truth if you know how to read them. That's both fascinating and slightly terrifying. Ryan leaned forward. Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? I promised to keep all my receipts organized. I looked at him, really looked. At the way his confidence didn't quite mask his vulnerability, at how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. At all the little tells that said this man was either exactly what he seemed or the best liar I'd ever met. Yes, I said, surprising myself again. But I have one condition. Name it. No calculators allowed at the table. His laughter filled the cafe again, and something inside me shifted. Like the first number in a complex equation, changing everything that followed. Deal, he said, reaching for my hand. Though I should warn you, my family's going to love you. I didn't know then how wrong he was. Didn't know that in 6 months, his sister Jenna would try to destroy everything I held dear. Didn't know that my ability to read numbers would uncover a betrayal that would tear his family apart. But that's the thing about numbers. They always tell the truth, even when we're not ready to hear it. The Bennett mansion loomed before me like a corporate headquarters, masquerading as a home. 3 weeks after meeting Ryan, I stood at their front door, my knuckles white around a bottle of wine I'd spent too long selecting. Ready? Ryan squeezed my hand. They're going to love you. The door opened before I could answer. Laura Bennett's smile was warm enough to melt steel. You must be Peyton. Come in, come in. Ryan hasn't stopped talking about you. The foyer could have housed my entire apartment. Family photos lined the walls, professional portraits of perfect poses, and calculated casual moments. I noticed Ryan featured prominently in most of them, while a dark-haired woman appeared less frequently, often at the edges. Father's in his study, a crisp voice announced from the top of the stairs. He's reviewing quarterly reports. Jenna Bennett descended like royalty, each step measured. Her Louboutins probably cost more than my monthly rent. I'm Jenna, she said, extending a manicured hand. Ryan's sister. I handle procurement for Bennett Electronics. Procurement? I matched her grip. That must keep you busy, especially with the new Asian markets opening up. Something flickered in her eyes. You follow our business dealings? I follow numbers. They tell interesting stories. Jenna, Ryan cut in, Peyton's one of the top forensic auditors at Morrison & Klein. How fascinating. Jenna's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I hope you're not planning to audit us. Family businesses can be complicated. Thomas Bennett's entrance saved me from responding. He carried authority like a well-worn coat, comfortable but unmistakable. There's my boy, he boomed, embracing Ryan. Then he turned to me, his handshake firm. So you're the calculator girl. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle warfare. Laura's attempts at warmth competed with Jenna's Arctic precision. Every question felt like a test. And your family, Peyton? Thomas asked between bites of perfectly cooked salmon. What do they do? It's just me, I said. My parents died in a car accident when I was 12. My grandmother raised me until college. How awful, Jenna murmured. That must be why you're so detail-oriented. Trying to control what you can. Actually, I met her gaze, it taught me that numbers don't abandon you. They don't lie or make excuses. They just are. Speaking of numbers, Thomas leaned forward, what do you make of the market volatility lately? Our Asian expansion has been interesting. Father, Ryan warned, but I was already answering. The numbers suggest someone's taking advantage of currency fluctuations. Your procurement department must be working overtime to manage the risk. Jenna's fork clattered against her plate. More wine. She stood abruptly, reaching for the bottle. Allow me, Ryan offered, but she'd already moved, her arm brushing mine. Red wine splashed across my white blouse. Oh, I'm so sorry. Jenna's concern was perfect theater. How clumsy of me. Here, let me help. It's fine. I dabbed at the stain with my napkin, noting how the wine spread like blood across fabric. Nothing I can't handle. Laura hustled me to the powder room, armed with club soda and apologies. Through the door, I heard raised voices. Really, Jenna? Ryan's anger was clear. It was an accident, Jenna snapped. Unlike some people's hiring decisions. I pressed my ear to the door, but their voices dropped to hisses. When I emerged, the dining room wore a mask of forced normalcy. Peyton, Thomas called as we prepared to leave, join us for Sunday brunch next week. I'd love to hear more about your work. Jenna's smile turned predatory. Yes, do come. I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss. In the car, Ryan was quiet for several miles. I'm sorry about Jenna, he finally said. She's protective of the family. Is that what you call it? I watched streetlights flash past. Ryan, what's really going on with your sister? He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Nothing. Everything's fine. But I'd seen the tension in Thomas's shoulders when Asian markets were mentioned. Noticed how Jenna flinched at procurement questions. Something wasn't adding up, and if there's one thing I knew about numbers, they never lie. I just hadn't realized how dangerous the truth would be. 6 months flew past like balance sheets in a windstorm. The diamond on my left hand caught the morning light as I studied the pregnancy test's double pink lines. Ryan and I had planned to announce it at tonight's family dinner, our first real celebration since the wedding 3 months ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas, need your expertise. Found something odd in Q3 reports. Can you stop by the office before dinner? I texted back my agreement, trying to ignore the flutter of unease. Since joining the family, I'd noticed Thomas growing increasingly concerned about the company's financials. He'd drop hints, ask careful questions, always with Jenna hovering nearby like a shark, scenting blood. The Bennett Electronics headquarters occupied a gleaming tower downtown. Thomas's office commanded the top floor, but I found him in the conference room, surrounded by papers. Peyton, he looked up, shadows under his eyes. Thank you for coming. These procurement reports. He pushed several sheets toward me. Something's not right. I scanned the numbers, my trained eye catching discrepancies immediately. These supplier costs are inflated. And these shipping manifests? The door opened. Jenna stood there, perfectly composed in designer black. Father, I didn't expect to find you here. On a Saturday. Just showing Peyton some reports, Thomas said carefully. Getting a fresh perspective. How convenient. Jenna's smile was razor sharp. Our new daughter-in-law, already so invested in family business. She moved closer, peering at the papers. Though I'm sure you have more exciting news to focus on. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach. What do you mean? Please. She rolled her eyes. The way you've been avoiding wine? Looking green at breakfast? I'm not stupid, Peyton. Though apparently, you think we all are. Jenna, Thomas warned, but she continued. Did you really think you could waltz in here, seduce my brother, and take over everything? The company, the family? Her voice rose. I've worked my entire life for this company. Everything I've done has been for this family. Everything you've done? I kept my voice steady, though my heart raced. Like inflating supplier costs? Falsifying shipping records? The silence was deafening. Thomas stood slowly, looking between us. Careful, Peyton. Jenna's voice dropped to a whisper. Pregnancy can make women unstable. Paranoid, even. It would be a shame if stress affected the baby. My blood turned to ice. Is that a threat? A concern? From your loving sister-in-law. She gathered the papers from the table. These need to be properly filed. In my department. Where they belong. Jenna, Thomas's voice cracked like a whip. Leave those. It's fine, I interrupted, meeting Jenna's gaze. I already saw what I needed to see. She left with the papers, her heels clicking a victory march. Thomas sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. I'm sorry, he said. I should have seen. Should have known. Known what? I pressed, but he shook his head. Not now. Not here. We'll discuss it at dinner. But at dinner, Thomas never showed. Ryan got the call just as we were sitting down. His father had been rushed to the hospital with chest pains. Severe stress, the doctors said. Would need to rest for several days. How terrible, Jenna murmured, reaching for her wine. All this excitement can't be good for anyone. Especially not in your condition, Peyton. Laura gasped. Condition? Are you? Ryan grabbed my hand, his joy overshadowed by worry for his father. We were going to announce it tonight. We're having a baby. Oh, darling. Laura embraced me, tears in her eyes. Jenna's glass clinked against her plate. How wonderful. Though the timing seems convenient. Right when father's health fails, here comes the next generation of Bennetts. That's enough, Ryan snapped, but I squeezed his hand. It's fine, I said, watching Jenna. Family is complicated. Isn't that what you told me, Jenna? But numbers. Numbers never lie. And sooner or later, every calculation comes due. She held my gaze, challenge meeting challenge. In that moment, we both knew, this wasn't just about family anymore. This was war. And I had 9 months to win it. The baby shower invitations arrived in pale pink and gold, Jenna's elegant handwriting promising celebration and joy. I stared at mine for a full minute, my 6-month bump pressing against the kitchen counter. "She's trying," Ryan said, wrapping his arms around me. "Mom says she's been planning this for weeks." "That's what worries me." I traced the embossed letters. Since Thomas's heart attack, Jenna had been suspiciously accommodating, all while procurement records kept disappearing from the company servers. The Bennett mansion's grand room sparkled with expensive decorations when we arrived. Jenna floated between guests in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car. "Peyton, darling." She air-kissed my cheek. "You're absolutely glowing. Though you look tired. Running reports must be exhausting in your condition." Before I could respond, Laura appeared with a tray of mocktails. "Let's start with the gifts." I sat in the designated chair, feeling like a specimen under examination as 40 pairs of eyes watched me unwrap presents. Designer baby clothes, antique silver rattles, a custom-made crib that could have housed twins. "Open mine next," Jenna handed me a small box, her smile too bright. Inside lay a vintage pearl necklace I recognized from the family photos. Thomas had given it to Laura when Ryan was born. "Mother's pearls," Jenna announced to the room. "A family tradition, passed down to welcome new Bennett mothers." Her voice carried perfectly. "Though they seem to have gone missing from the safe last month. How fortunate I found them in time." The room went silent. Laura's hand flew to her throat. "Missing? But I just wore them at the charity gala." "Exactly." Jenna's eyes locked onto mine. Imagine my surprise when I discovered them in the guest room. "The one Peyton uses when she works late at the house." My fingers went numb. "What are you implying?" "Nothing, dear sister. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for how Mother's irreplaceable pearls ended up among your things." I started, but Jenna was already addressing the crowd. "It's probably pregnancy brain. So forgetful, these days. Though it does make one wonder about those missing procurement files." "Enough." Ryan stood. "Jenna, this is ridiculous." "Is it?" She pulled out her phone. "Because I have security footage of someone accessing the company servers after hours." "Someone with your wife's access code." The room spun. I recognized her trap too late. She'd been planning this for months, laying groundwork, planting evidence. "I can explain," I said, but guests were already whispering, gathering their bags. "Of course you can," Jenna soothed. "Just like you can explain the unauthorized transfers from our Asian accounts? The one's father was investigating before his unfortunate health issues?" Laura burst into tears. Ryan's face had gone pale. I stood, pearls clutched in my fist. "You want to talk about unauthorized transfers? Let's discuss your offshore accounts, Jenna. The ones you've been funneling company money into for the past year." "How dare you?" She stepped closer, voice dropping. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" I met her gaze. "Thomas showed me those reports for a reason. He knew something was wrong, and now I do too." "Thomas is an old man with a weak heart," she hissed. "And you're a pregnant woman with questionable mental stability. Who do you think the board will believe?" "Stop it, both of you." Ryan moved between us. "This is supposed to be a celebration." "Oh, it is," Jenna smiled. "It's a revelation of truth. About who really belongs in this family." I looked around the room, at Laura's tears, at the scattered gifts, at the faces of people who'd already decided my guilt. Then at Ryan, torn between wife and sister, tradition and truth. "You're right," I said, placing the pearls on a side table. "This is about belonging. And truth." I turned to leave, then paused. "But you forgot something, Jenna. Numbers don't care about belonging. They only care about being right." Her laugh followed me out. "Good luck proving anything without access to those files." She didn't know I'd already copied everything. Didn't know that while she was planning my downfall, I'd been building her coffin, nail by numerical nail. The game wasn't over. It was just getting started. 3 days after the baby shower disaster, I sat in my home office, surrounded by financial records I'd secretly copied over the past months. My laptop screen glowed with transaction logs, each number a piece of the puzzle I was assembling. The doorbell rang. Thomas Bennett stood there, looking older than his 60 years. "I heard about the shower," he said, stepping inside. "Jenna's always been protective of family assets." "Is that what we're calling embezzlement now?" I spread printouts across my dining table. "Look at these transfers. Every major procurement deal in Asia has a shadow transaction. Money disappearing into accounts I can't trace." Thomas studied the papers, his hands trembling slightly. "I suspected. But seeing it. There's more." I pulled up a document on my laptop. "Someone's been falsifying shipping manifests. Double billing clients. The company's hemorrhaging money, but the books show profit because Jenna's cooking them." He sank into a chair. "My own daughter." The front door opened. Ryan walked in, freezing at the sight of us. "Father? What's going on?" "Show him," Thomas said quietly. I turned the laptop toward Ryan. "Your sister's been stealing from the company. Millions, Ryan. And she's using my access codes to cover her tracks." Ryan's face went through a cascade of emotions: denial, anger, realization. "The pearls. The accusations. She was setting you up?" "As her fall person, yes." I touched my growing belly, feeling our baby kick. If the theft was discovered, all evidence would point to me. "We need to go to the police," Ryan started, but Thomas raised a hand. "Not yet. This needs to be handled internally first. For the company's sake." My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number: "Back off or the board learns about your unauthorized server access." "How's that pregnancy stress level?" I showed it to Ryan. His jaw clenched. "She's threatening our baby now?" He grabbed his keys. "I'm ending this." Wait, but he was already gone, door slamming behind him. Thomas touched my arm. "Let me talk to her first. Maybe if she knows I'm willing to forgive." "Forgive?" I stared at him. "She's stolen millions, threatened your grandchild, and tried to destroy my reputation. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. She's still my daughter. And I'm carrying your grandchild." I gathered the papers. "I won't let her hurt my family. Any of them. Including you." My phone buzzed again. "Laura, emergency at the office. Come quickly. Don't tell anyone." Thomas read the message over my shoulder. "It's Sunday. Why would Laura be at the office?" "She wouldn't." I grabbed my laptop. "But Jenna would use her mother's phone to set a trap." "Then don't go." I thought of Ryan, rushing to confront his sister. Of Laura, possibly being used as bait. Of the baby kicking inside me, reminding me what was really at stake. "I have to." I headed for the door. "But I'm not going alone. Peyton. Call the police. Tell them everything. Then call Ryan, keep him away from the office." I touched the flash drive around my neck, containing copies of all evidence. "It's time everyone saw the truth." "Be careful," Thomas called as I left. "Jenna's always been brilliant at games." "This isn't a game anymore," I muttered, starting my car. "It's a reckoning." The Bennett Electronics building loomed ahead, its windows dark except for the top floor, Jenna's office. As I parked, another car pulled in beside me. Laura stepped out, confusion on her face. "Peyton?" "I got a text from Ryan saying to meet him here." My blood ran cold. Jenna hadn't just set a trap, she'd orchestrated a family reunion. And somewhere above us, she was waiting, holding all the pieces she thought would destroy me. But she'd forgotten something crucial: numbers don't lie, and I had 7 months of truth documented in that flash drive. Whatever game she was playing, I was about to change the rules. I took Laura's arm, leading her toward the building. Stay close to me. It's time to show your daughter what real family loyalty looks like. The elevator doors opened to darkness. Laura clutched my arm as we stepped onto the executive floor, emergency lights casting long shadows across empty desks. Jenna? Laura called out. Darling, are you here? A figure moved in Thomas's office. Ryan emerged, his face tight with anger. What are you both doing here? I told you to stay home. You didn't text me, Laura said. Jenna did. Using your number. The overhead lights blazed on. Jenna stood by the breaker panel, wearing the same dress from the baby shower. Family reunion. How touching. It's over, Jenna. Ryan moved toward his sister. We know everything. Do you? She smiled, pulling out her phone. Because I just sent the board some interesting emails. Seems our pregnant auditor has been accessing confidential files, making unauthorized transfers. Covering her tracks poorly. My hand went to the flash drive around my neck. Those transfers trace back to your accounts. Not anymore. She tapped her screen. Amazing what good IT people can do. Every transaction now bears your digital signature. Even the ones happening right now. My phone buzzed. A notification from the company's banking app, large transfers in progress, all under my authorization. Stop this, Laura pleaded. We're family. Family? Jenna's laugh was brittle. Ask father who he trusted with the company's future. Ask Ryan who got every opportunity while I worked twice as hard. Ask our new sister-in-law who father asked to investigate the books. Because you were stealing. Ryan shouted. I was taking what I deserved. She moved to her desk, pulling out a familiar leather folder. Everything I did was for this company. While you played perfect son, I kept us profitable. Made the hard choices. By committing fraud? I stepped forward, but a wave of dizziness hit me. The baby kicked hard. By surviving. Jenna opened the folder. And now you'll all understand what that means. The elevator dinged. Thomas emerged with 2 police officers. It's done, Jenna. I've told them everything. Have you? She smiled. Show them the evidence, Peyton. Your precious flash drive. I reached for my neck. The chain was gone. Looking for this? She held up the drive. Lifted it when I hugged you at the shower. Amateur move, keeping everything in one place. That's not the only copy, I started, but she cut me off. The cloud files? Deleted. Server backups? Corrupted. It's your word against mine, and right now, millions are flowing through your access codes. The room spun again. I grabbed a desk for support, feeling wetness on my legs. Peyton? Ryan rushed to me. You're bleeding. Laura gasped. The baby. Get an ambulance. Thomas shouted. Jenna watched, unmoved. Stress is so dangerous during pregnancy. Maybe if you hadn't been obsessing over false accusations. False? I forced myself upright, fighting the pain. The original files are gone. And in about 10 minutes, you'll be arrested for corporate theft. Such a tragedy, pregnant woman has mental breakdown, tries to frame innocent sister-in-law. Ryan supported my weight as my knees buckled. This isn't a game, Jenna. She needs a hospital. Life isn't fair. She turned to the officers. I'd like to press charges. Through the haze of pain, I saw Laura move to her daughter's desk, saw her hand brush against Jenna's purse. Saw her palm something small. Wait, Laura's voice shook. Before anyone does anything. She held up a small recorder. Let's hear that confession again. Jenna's face went white. What? Your mother's birthday gift, Laura said softly. The one you mocked for being old-fashioned. Digital recordings are so easy to delete, but this is analog. Like the truth. The recorder crackled to life. Everything I did was for this company. I kept us profitable. By surviving. As Jenna lunged for her mother, the officers moved in. Through the chaos, through the pain, I heard sirens approaching. But all I could think was, some numbers can't be erased. Some truths refuse to stay hidden. And some victories cost more than we're prepared to pay. The hospital room felt too small for all the tension it held. 3 days after the office confrontation, I sat propped up in bed, my baby safely stabilized, watching Jenna's arraignment on the room's small TV. Ryan gripped my hand as his sister pleaded not guilty. A knock at the door. Thomas entered, looking grave. The board's reviewing everything. The evidence on Laura's recorder. It's damning. Not damning enough, Ryan muttered. Her lawyers are already talking about mental stress, temporary insanity. That's why I'm here. Thomas placed a thick folder on my lap. These just came in from our Hong Kong office. Backdated contracts, double invoices. All with Jenna's original signatures. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. She got sloppy in the beginning. Before she learned to cover her tracks. The door burst open. Jenna strode in, followed by her lawyer and 2 police officers. Discussing company business without the head of procurement? That's against protocol. You're out on bail? Ryan stood, positioning himself between her and my bed. Money opens doors, brother dear. Speaking of money. She smiled at me. Those transfers under your access codes? Still unexplained. That's enough, Thomas started, but Jenna raised her hand. No, father, it's not. You want truth? Here's truth. She moved closer to my bed. I built this company's success, while Ryan played favorite son. Every deal, every contract, I made them happen. And my reward? Being investigated by an outsider. You stole millions, I said quietly. I earned millions. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Little orphan Peyton, so desperate for family, she'd destroy one to belong. The baby monitor beeped steadily. I looked at it, then at her. You're right. I don't understand family the way you do. I never had siblings to betray. Betray? Her laugh was sharp. I protected this family. Every illegal deal kept us competitive. Every stolen dollar kept people employed. But you only see numbers, don't you? Black and white. No gray areas. Show her, Thomas said suddenly. I pulled out one last document from under my pillow. Your first procurement deal, Jenna. The one that started everything. She froze. Father was so proud, he kept the original contract. Complete with your notes in the margin, calculations showing how to skim money through inflated costs. You weren't protecting the company. You were testing how much you could take. You don't understand. I understand numbers. And fear. I touched my stomach. You were afraid of being overlooked. Of not measuring up. So you took what you thought you deserved, then couldn't stop. Shut up. She lunged forward, but the officers caught her arms. The thing about numbers, Jenna? I continued. They're like family. Complex, interconnected. Change one, you affect them all. Just like your actions affected everyone in this room. Laura appeared in the doorway, tears streaming. Oh, Jenna. Why didn't you just talk to us? Talk? Jenna struggled against the officers. Like you talked to me, mother? All those years of Ryan so successful, and why can't you be more like your brother? I never. You didn't have to. It was in every look, every silence. Well, guess what? I succeeded. I made myself indispensable. Until she came along. She glared at me. The perfect daughter-in-law. The one who could do no wrong. No, I said softly. Just the one who could read the numbers. And they told me everything you couldn't say. Thomas stepped forward. Jenna Bennett, you're formally terminated from Bennett Electronics. And his voice cracked. You're no longer welcome in this family's home. You can't. I can. I must. He turned away. Officers, please remove my daughter. As they led her out, Jenna looked back once. In that moment, I saw not the sophisticated executive, but a little girl still trying to prove her worth. The numbers don't lie, she said quietly. But sometimes I wish they did. The door closed behind her. Ryan buried his face in my shoulder. Laura sobbed in Thomas's arms. And on the monitor, our baby's heartbeat continued its steady count. Marking time like numbers in a ledger, each beat a reminder that some calculations change us forever. The calculator sits on my desk, its display dark, the same ridiculously expensive model that brought Ryan and me together. Now it serves as a paperweight for court documents detailing Jenna's guilty plea. My daughter kicks in her carrier beside me as I review the final numbers. The restitution payments, the legal fees, the restructuring costs, they all add up to one complicated truth: some debts can never be fully repaid. A knock at my office door. Laura stands there, holding a familiar leather-bound folder. These came from Jenna's attorney. More evidence? Letters. She places them on my desk. One for each of us. She wrote them during her first month in prison. I stare at the envelopes, each name written in Jenna's precise handwriting. Have you read yours? Not yet. Laura touches her letter with trembling fingers. Some calculations I'm not ready to face. The baby fusses. I lift her, breathing in her powder-fresh scent as I rock her. Did you know she used to help me with math homework? Laura continues. Before the competition with Ryan started. Before everything became about proving herself. My letter feels heavy in my hands. Through the window, I can see the Bennett Electronics building, its windows reflecting the setting sun. Thomas and Ryan are there now, rebuilding what Jenna nearly destroyed. She asked to meet you, Laura says quietly. When you're ready. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. Neither was I. She pulls something from her purse, the pearl necklace from the baby shower. But family ledgers are never truly closed, are they? I think of Jenna in her cell, writing letters she wasn't sure would be read. Of the little girl in those family photos, always at the edges, watching her brother shine. What do the numbers tell you now? Laura asks. I look at my daughter, at her tiny fingers curled around my thumb. That some calculations don't fit in neat columns. That balance sheets can't measure what really matters. And revenge? Feels different when you're holding something precious. I adjust the baby's blanket. Maybe that's what Jenna never had, something to protect besides her pride. Laura stands to leave, but pauses. Will you read it? I pick up Jenna's letter. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story either. Maybe it's time I heard hers. After Laura leaves, I open the envelope. Jenna's words stare back at me. Dear Peyton. You once told me numbers don't abandon you. But people do. Or at least, that's what I always feared. Every achievement became a shield, every dollar a defense against being left behind. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was really just proving what I feared most, that I wasn't worth loving without proving my value. You protected our family by exposing me. I protected no one by betraying them. That's a calculation I'm still learning to live with. Take care of them. And maybe someday, teach my niece that her worth isn't measured in balance sheets or boardroom victories. Jenna. The baby yawns, her tiny face peaceful. I think of the calculator that started everything, of how some connections can't be quantified. Of how revenge, like redemption, rarely follows a straight line. I reach for my phone, type a short message, visit approved. Bring a calculator. Some numbers need witnesses. Because maybe that's what family really is, not a perfect equation, but a complex formula of mistakes and mercy, betrayal and forgiveness. All adding up to something greater than its parts. My daughter stretches in her sleep, and I add one final entry to today's ledger. Some debts are meant to be forgiven, not collected. Some battles end not with victory, but with understanding. And sometimes, the truest calculations are the ones that don't balance at all.
Growing up was tough with Dad always on my back. Mom passed away when I was little, so it was just the two of us, and Dad took the whole single parenting gig to another level. He had rules for everything. No hanging out with the kids who like to race cars, no wild hair colors, and studying had to be my top priority. Jenna, those kids are trouble, you hear me? Stay away from them. Dad would warn me, his voice stern whenever he saw me chatting with the neighborhood thrill seekers. But Dad, they're just having fun. We're not kids anymore, I'd shoot back, trying to stand my ground. It ain't about age. It's about making smart choices, and dyeing your hair like a traffic light ain't smart, he'd say, squinting his eyes as if he could scare the rebellion out of me. I wasn't having any of it. Maybe I want to stand out, I'd retort, my voice just as firm. Dad wasn't just a stickler at home. He had a reputation around town, too, always preaching about responsibility and hard work. He meant well, but to me it felt suffocating. Every time we clashed, which was often, I'd pack a bag and storm over to Aunt Marie's place. She was Dad's younger sister, lived a few blocks away, and was the exact opposite of him, easygoing and always with a smile. Aunt Marie, why can't he just chill out? It's like he's stuck in some ancient times, I'd complain, as soon as I dropped onto her couch. She'd chuckle, handing me a soda before sitting down next to me. Jenna, your dad's just scared. He lost your mom, and he's afraid of losing you too, but he sees the world in black and white. But that's just it. I'm not him. I need some color in my life, you know, I'd say, popping the can open. Marie would nod, her expression softening. He does go overboard, but he's not wrong about everything. Give it time, you'll see some of his points. That was Aunt Marie, always trying to bridge the gap between Dad and me. But back then, I couldn't see it. All I knew was that I wanted out. So, as soon as high school was over, I grabbed my chance. Thanks to my grades, I landed a scholarship and went off to college, leaving my hometown and Dad behind. College was freedom. For the first time, I made my own decisions without anyone looming over me. I dyed my hair purple, stayed out late, and yes, even got involved with a group that loved street racing, but I kept my head in the books. I wasn't about to waste the scholarship or the opportunities I had fought so hard for. After 4 years of hard work and a fair share of fun, I graduated with a degree in accounting and a job offer from a respected firm in the city. My boss, Mr. Thompson, was a tough guy but fair, much like Dad and his expectations, but without the personal judgment. When I met Mike, it felt like hitting the jackpot. It was at a casual hangout with some friends from work. He was there with a buddy who knew one of my colleagues. Mike had that easy charm, a quick smile, and an infectious laugh that pulled you right in. We got talking, and it turned out we had a ton in common. Both mad about classic rock, both foodies, and both into old movies. Ever seen Casablanca? He asked, eyes lighting up as he took a sip of his beer. Are you kidding? Here's looking at you. Kid is my go-to toast. I laughed, thrilled to meet someone who shared my quirky interests. We hit it off immediately, and before long, we were inseparable. Dating Mike was a whirlwind of dinner dates, movie nights, and lazy weekends just lounging around. 6 months later, we were married. It felt right, like everything was falling into place. The first year was bliss. We talked about everything, made decisions together, shared our dreams and our bank accounts. I felt like I finally had the partnership I craved. Equal, open, just perfect. But then, things started to change. It began subtly. One night, as I was getting ready to meet some friends for drinks after work, Mike frowned. "You're going out again? You know, you've been kind of busy lately," he said, his tone more accusing than curious. "Just catching up with the gang. It's been ages," I replied, trying to keep the mood light. "Yeah, but maybe you should chill on the outings. We could use some us time," he insisted, not really asking but telling. I paused, a bit thrown off. "Sure, we can plan something for the weekend." It didn't stop there. Mike's suggestions became rules. He started expressing his concerns about the time I spent with my friends and even my workmates. Then came the big ask. One evening, Mike was going through our finances, a spreadsheet open on his laptop, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Babe, I've been thinking," he started, not looking up from the screen. "It would make more sense if I managed our finances. Just hand over your account details." I hesitated, surprised. "What? Why? I've been handling my finances since forever?" "It's just easier this way. I can keep track of our spending and savings. Plus, it's what a husband does, right?" he said, finally looking up at me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I felt a chill, but nodded, unsure. "Okay, if you think it's best." From then on, Mike took control. He decided where we went, what we did on weekends, and how we spent our money. If I suggested something different, he'd shoot it down. "No, that's not a good idea," he dismissed without discussion. As months passed, I found myself fading into the background of my own life. My friends stopped calling so much, knowing I'd likely say no. My world shrank to what Mike approved, and the vibrant, independent woman I once was began to disappear. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. Living near Mike and his parents seemed ideal at first, like having a close-knit family just next door. But reality bit hard and fast. His mom, Nancy, was a sweet talker with a controlling twist, and his dad, Frank, was just as invasive, treating our place like it was his own. One chilly evening, I was just getting home from a long day at work, my mind on the 1,000 things I still had to do, when Nancy called. Her voice was sugary sweet at first. "Jenna, darling, have you started dinner yet? Mike must be starving after his hard day," she cooed over the phone. "Actually, Nancy, I just walked in. Dinner's going to be a bit late tonight," I replied, trying not to let my frustration show. Her tone flipped cold as ice. "Well, I hope Mike doesn't have to wait too long. A man needs his dinner on time, you know." It wasn't just the dinner comments. Nancy believed Mike should be pampered because his job was supposedly more demanding, despite us both working full-time. Her idea of fairness was skewed wildly in her son's favor. I was expected to handle everything else, cooking, cleaning, and then some. It didn't stop at our home either. Nancy had me over at their place regularly, pushing a broom or a mop into my hands the moment I stepped through the door. And Frank, he was no better. Weekends were his domain, apparently. He'd show up at our house first thing Saturday morning, remote in hand, ready to take over the living room. The TV volume cranked so high it made the windows rattle. He'd settle in like a king. "Jenna, where's the beer? I thought you'd have stocked up for the weekend," Frank would bellow from his makeshift throne. "It's in the fridge, Frank," I'd call out, trying to hide my annoyance. Frank would grumble something under his breath about kids these days, as he raided the refrigerator, leaving a trail of crumbs and empty bottles in his wake. Mike never said a word against it, always shrugging off my complaints. It was exhausting, Between my job, keeping our home, and catering to the whims of my in-laws, I was stretched thin. I began to lose pieces of myself, my time, and my sanity to their endless demands. Things at work took a sharp turn when my company decided to absorb a smaller firm. The accounting department there was a mess, a tangled web of inaccuracies and outdated systems. It fell on me to sort it all out, which meant long hours and even more stress. Coming home late became the norm rather than the exception. One particularly grueling evening, I got home to find Mike lounging on the sofa, flipping through channels. The dinner table was untouched and empty. "Where's dinner? You know I get hungry after work," he complained without even looking my way. I dropped my bag, my patience worn thin. "Mike, you know what's been going on at work. You were here first. Why couldn't you have made something?" He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that filled the room. "Me cook dinner? That's women's work, Jenna. I'm not about to start playing house husband." I felt a surge of anger. "We agreed before we got married there'd be no men's or women's jobs. We're supposed to be in this together," I shot back, my voice rising. Mike's face darkened, and he stood up abruptly. "I don't have time for this nonsense," he snapped, grabbing his keys off the counter. "Where are you going?" I demanded, but he was already heading for the door. "Out, away from this," he threw over his shoulder, and then he was gone. He disappeared for days. No calls, no texts, just silence. I was left alone, wrestling with my escalating workload and the crumbling facade of my marriage. When he finally came back, he acted as if nothing had happened, ignoring the strain and tension between us. Around that time, I received some good news at work. My efforts hadn't gone unnoticed, and I was promoted with a significant salary increase. I was over the moon until I shared it with Mike. "That's great, babe," he said, a quick smile flashing across his face. "Guess what? I'll quit in a week. No point in working now that you're making enough for both of us." I stared at him, stunned. "What?" "Mike, we need to discuss this together." He shrugged, completely unconcerned. "You're making plenty. I can finally relax a bit." The next day, I went to work early, the weight of my thoughts heavier than ever. I stayed late again, my mind buzzing with figures and files, but also with a growing resolve. When I finally got home, Mike was waiting, his expression sour. "You're late again. Where's dinner?" He started in immediately. I took a deep breath, my decision clear in my mind. "Mike, we need to talk. This isn't working. I can't be the only one trying here," he scoffed, crossing his arms. "So what are you saying? You want a medal for working hard? Come off it, Jenna." "No, I want a partner. Someone who stands with me, not on me," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. Mike looked at me, really looked, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of understanding. But then it was gone, replaced by the stubborn set of his jaw. "If you can't handle this, maybe you shouldn't have taken that promotion," he retorted coldly. Then he grabbed his jacket and slammed the door behind him. 9 months had slipped by, months where I found myself trapped in a life I never envisioned. Mike never went back to work. Instead, he filled his days meeting with friends and often stumbled home late, reeking of booze. Each time I dared to question him, he'd explode in anger, retreating to the sanctity of his parents' home, where he was still treated like a child rather than a grown man. "You're being too hard on him, Jenna. You should be supporting your husband, not tearing him down." Nancy, his mother, would screech over the phone whenever he ran off to them. "I'm supporting the whole family, Nancy. What more do you want from me?" I'd shoot back, my patience worn to nothing. It wasn't just supporting Mike. His parents had grown dependent on me, too. Small amounts of money were frequently requested. Money for groceries, money for bills. It seemed their hands were always outstretched, waiting for me to fill them. Her only response was to hang up, leaving me fuming and helpless. One day, amidst this ongoing storm, I received a call that shattered the uneasy calm. Aunt Marie's voice was soft but strained as she relayed the news of Dad's passing. My world stopped. The last time we spoke, we had argued. Silly things, youthful pride clashing with his rigid ways. I never got the chance to make peace. "Can you come with me to the funeral?" I asked Mike, a desperate plea for some semblance of support. He barely glanced up from the TV. "Nah, I can't handle funerals." "You go handle it," he muttered, dismissing my need with a wave of his hand. So I went alone. The funeral was a blur, faces of family and friends I hadn't seen in years, all mourning the man who raised me alone. But it was afterward, while sitting in Dad's lawyer's office, that reality hit hard. Dad had left me everything, his house and savings, a total of $250,000. Tears streamed down my face as I realized, despite our differences, Dad had been preparing me for a future, perhaps knowing I'd need a way out someday. That night, in the quiet of my childhood home, I thumbed through old photo albums. Pictures of me in rebellious outfits with bright hair and brighter smiles all screamed of a girl who dreamed of freedom. I had traded those dreams for security, only to end up more caged than ever. As dawn broke, clarity came with it. It was time for a change, a big one. The money and the house weren't just an inheritance. They were my ticket to a new life, a chance to rediscover the fierce girl who once believed she could conquer the world. I need to do this, not just for me, but for the woman Dad believed I could be. I whispered to myself, a vow in the still morning air. When I walked through the door of what used to be our shared home, the air was thick with expectation. Mike and his parents were already waiting, like vultures perched for the kill. Their eyes lit up with a mix of greed and curiosity as they spotted me. "So, Jenna, how much did old Hal leave you?" Mike asked, his voice dripping with faint concern. I hesitated, clutching the documents a little tighter. Before I could reply, Mike snatched the papers right from my hands. As he scanned the figures, a triumphant grin spread across his face. $250,000, he exclaimed, turning to his parents, who immediately began to buzz with excitement. His mother, Nancy, clapped her hands together. "Oh, that will cover a lovely vacation for us all. How about Italy or maybe a cruise?" Frank was already nodding in agreement. "And we need new furniture, something nice, something grand," he chimed in. Mike, not to be outdone in the dreaming, banged his fist on the table. "It's settled then. I'm getting a new car. It's about time I rode in style." I stood there, stunned into silence for a moment, as they carried on planning, as if I wasn't even in the room. Gathering my courage, I finally spoke up. "Listen up, all of you. This is my inheritance, not yours. I decide how it's spent, not you," I said, my voice firm, louder than I felt. Mike whirled on me, his face twisted in anger. "You think you're in charge here? Keep talking like that, and I'll divorce you so fast, it'll make your head spin." His threat hung in the air, but before I could respond, Nancy grabbed me by the shoulders and shoved me towards the door. "Think about how you're acting, Jenna. You're too arrogant. Maybe a night outside will cool you off," she hissed, her voice venomous. I stumbled out the door, the shock of the physical and emotional assault numbing my senses. For a moment, I stood there bewildered by the audacity of their entitlement. But then, almost unexpectedly, a laugh bubbled up from within me. It started small but grew in volume, echoing into the quiet street. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a strange, exhilarating freedom. With nowhere else to go, I drove back to my father's house. The familiar walls welcomed me like an old friend. That night, the reality of my situation began to sink in, and a plan started to form. First thing in the morning, I picked up the phone and dialed my office. "Hey, it's Jenna. I need to ask for a couple of weeks off. Personal leave. I've got some things to sort out," I explained, when my boss, Mr. Thompson, answered. "Jenna, take all the time you need. I've noticed you've been off your game a bit lately. Whatever it is, sort it out. We'll manage here," Mr. Thompson replied, his voice kind and understanding. "Thanks, Mr. T. I appreciate it more than you know," I said, grateful for his support. Hanging up, I felt the first real peace in a long while. The next steps were clear. I needed to legally separate myself and my finances from Mike and his parasitic hold on my life. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to fight back. I was sipping coffee from Dad's favorite mug, enjoying the quiet of the morning when my phone began to buzz relentlessly on the kitchen counter. At first, I ignored it, savoring the peace and the slight amusement at the thought that Mike and his parents were probably scheming about my inheritance. But the phone wouldn't stop. It was like it had a life of its own. Finally, I picked up, bracing myself for the onslaught. "What is it, Mike?" I snapped, not in the mood for niceties. "Jenna, you need to give us access to the money. I can't get into the account." His voice was a mix of frustration and panic. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound sharp and clear. "That's because I've restricted access, Mike. You can't use my money anymore," I said, enjoying the moment of revelation. There was a pause, a silence filled with his disbelief. "You can't do that. We're married." "Not for long," I replied curtly and hung up. That should have been the end of it, but of course it wasn't. That evening, just as I was settling down with a book, I heard the familiar sound of a car pulling up outside. Mike and his parents came storming up to the front door, their faces twisted with anger and desperation. They didn't even wait for me to invite them in. Nancy pushed past the doorway, her voice shrill. "You think you're clever, huh? Cutting us off like that?" Frank followed, his brow furrowed. "You're supposed to share what you have with your family." Mike was the last to enter, his expression one of betrayed fury. "This is about us, Jenna. You're ruining everything." I stood my ground, feeling more secure in my decision than ever. "This is not about us, Mike. This never was. It's always been about what you could get from me." His face contorted with anger. "Well, guess what? We're getting a divorce." That's when I handed him the divorce papers, neatly prepared and waiting for this moment. The surprise on his face was almost comical. "What's this?" "Your freedom," I said dryly. "Sign them, and you're free to leave." He scanned the documents quickly, a greedy spark lighting up his eyes as he signed. "Fine, but remember, I get half. 125,000, that'll adjust our plans." "But it's something," Nancy muttered under her breath. "Should have been the full 250,000. Getting a piece of wool from a black sheep, aren't we?" I couldn't hold back a laugh. "Actually, you're getting nothing. Inheritance isn't divided in a divorce here. Not a cent of that money is yours." The color drained from their faces. Mike's hands shook as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. "But we've already spent." Anticipating that money, we went on vacation, bought things on credit. His voice faded as the reality of their financial blunder hit him. Nancy's eyes were wide with fear, and Frank looked like he was about to collapse. "This isn't my problem. You made your choices," I said, my voice cold but steady. "Now, if you don't leave, I'll call the police." The threat was enough. They stumbled out, a mix of shock and anger marking their defeat. As the door closed behind them, a profound sense of relief washed over me. They were out of my life, finally and completely. Selling Dad's house was tough, like closing the final chapter of my old life. I felt every pang of regret as I handed over the keys, but I knew it was the right move. With that money, I bought a new place right next to my work, a cozy little house that was all mine, no strings attached. At work, things were looking up too, and Mr. Thompson had been watching my progress closely, and one afternoon he called me into his office. The sun streamed through the blinds, casting lines across his face as he looked up from his papers. "Jenna, you've been pulling in some impressive numbers, and your leadership hasn't gone unnoticed," he started, his tone serious but warm. I stood there, hands clasped in front of me, waiting. "I want to offer you the position of deputy director. You've earned it," he said, his eyes steady on mine. "Thank you, Mr. T. I won't let you down," I replied, a mix of pride and excitement swelling in my chest. It felt good, really good, to be recognized for my hard work and not just seen as a bank account or a maid. Meanwhile, Mike and his parents' situation had taken a nosedive. They were buried in debt after their reckless spending spree, hiding from creditors who weren't too pleased about unpaid bills. They had to sell their house, but even that wasn't enough to cover their debts. Last I heard, they were cramped in a small rented apartment, all of them working odd jobs just to make ends meet. One evening, my phone rang, and Mike's name flashed on the screen. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Jenna, listen, I've been thinking a lot," he started, his voice shaky. "I made a mistake, a big one. I want to make things right, maybe start over." I couldn't help but laugh, not a joyful laugh, but one tinged with disbelief. "Start over, Mike? Do you even hear yourself?" I know it sounds crazy, but I've changed, Jenna," he insisted, desperation clear in his voice. "Changed, Mike. You only call when you're out of money or options. You don't need a restart, you need a reality check," I shot back, my patience thin. With that, I hung up. I realized then that I was truly free, not just from Mike, but from the hold his family had on me, from the life I was forced into. Now I really understand what Dad tried to teach me all those years. He knew the value of standing on your own, of making tough decisions for the sake of your future. I only wish I could tell him he was right. Share a moment of reconciliation.
My husband didn't invite his parents to the wedding, but my in-laws stormed in on my wedding day. My mother-in-law shouted at me, "You dishwasher, how did you come into my son's life?" She also insulted my family. I felt embarrassed and asked her to stop speaking. In her anger, she approached me and pulled my hair hard, causing me to drop to the floor. Everyone was shocked. My husband came forward, pulled my mother-in-law back, and asked her to leave the event. I decided to take revenge with the help of my friend. The very next day, I gave them a shocking surprise. My name is Anna Walker, and this is the story of my life, one filled with love, betrayal, and the fight for justice. I'm 29 years old, a law student, but not long ago, I was just a dishwasher at a local restaurant in Seattle, Washington. I never thought I would find love in such an ordinary place, but that's exactly where my story begins. It was a rainy afternoon when Ethan Brooks walked into the diner for the first time. I had been scrubbing dishes in the back, trying to drown out the sounds of clattering plates and the sizzling grill. But when I stepped out to refill a coffee pot, I saw him. Ethan was tall, with dark hair and an easy smile that could light up the dreariest of days. I felt a strange warmth rush over me, an unexpected flutter in my stomach. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, trying to sound professional, but my voice wavered slightly. "Just coffee for now." "Black, please," he replied, looking straight into my eyes. "And maybe your number if you're not too busy." I laughed at his boldness, my cheeks flushing. "Sorry, I don't give my number to customers. Company policy." "Is that so? Well, I'll just have to come back every day until you change your mind," he grinned. And that's precisely what he did. He came in every single day, for 2 weeks. At first, it was just coffee and light conversation. He was charming, asking about my life, and I found myself looking forward to our chats. There was something special about him, something that made me feel seen. Finally, after 2 weeks of his persistent charm, I agreed to go out with him. "Fine," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "One date, but don't get your hopes up, Mr. Brooks." That one date turned into 6 months of pure bliss. We spent countless evenings laughing over cheap takeout, going for walks by the waterfront, and dreaming about the future. Ethan was different from anyone I had ever met. He saw beyond my job as a dishwasher. He appreciated me for who I was, not for my circumstances. But as our relationship deepened, I began to worry about what would happen when he introduced me to his family. Ethan came from wealth, and I worried his parents would look down on me because of my job and my modest background. "What if they don't like me?" I asked him one evening as we sat on the couch, watching the rain pour outside. "They'll love you. They just need to get to know you," he assured me, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. One evening, just after we celebrated our 6-month anniversary, Ethan surprised me with a proposal. He took me to our favorite spot by the waterfront, where the moonlight danced on the water's surface. "Anna," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "will you marry me?" I was speechless. Tears filled my eyes as I nodded, barely able to breathe. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As we began planning our wedding, I was excited yet anxious about meeting his parents, Henry and Catherine Brooks. I knew they owned a successful import-export business, but what I didn't know was how harsh their judgment would be. The day finally came when I was introduced to them. We gathered at a lavish restaurant, and as soon as I walked in, I felt small. The Brooks family was everything I wasn't: wealthy, polished, and powerful. Henry was imposing, with a stern expression, while Catherine was all sharp elegance, her eyes scanning me like I was a specimen under a microscope. "Ethan tells us you're a dishwasher?" Catherine asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "Yes," I replied, trying to stand tall. "I work at the diner while I finish my law degree." "Law degrees?" Henry scoffed. "That's quite ambitious for someone in your position." I could feel my heart pounding. "I'm determined to make something of myself," I said, trying to hold my ground. But it only got worse from there. The dinner was filled with thinly veiled insults and judgmental glances. Afterward, as we walked out, I turned to Ethan. "They don't like me," I whispered, my heart sinking. "It doesn't matter. I love you, Anna." "That's all that counts," he replied, but I could sense his tension. However, the situation escalated quickly. Ethan and I decided to have a small wedding, just close friends, no family. I was relieved, but also nervous about what would happen if his parents found out. On the day of our wedding, just as I was about to walk down the aisle, the doors burst open. There stood Henry and Catherine, their faces filled with fury. "What are you doing?" Henry shouted, shocking everyone into silence. Catherine stepped forward, her voice cold as ice. "You can't marry her, Ethan. She's a gold digger. Just look at her." I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. "Please, just let us have our day," I begged, trying to maintain my composure. But Catherine didn't stop. "You think this poor girl can make you happy? She'll only drag you down." As I stood there, my heart racing, I felt tears prick my eyes. I tried to speak up, to defend myself, but before I could say anything, Catherine lunged at me. She pulled my hair hard, and I fell to the ground, completely mortified as gasps filled the room. Ethan surged forward, anger blazing in his eyes. "Get away from her," he shouted, pulling his mother back. "You have no right to treat her like this." In that moment, I realized how serious the situation had become. My wedding day, which was supposed to be filled with joy, had turned into a battleground. And as Henry and Catherine stormed out, leaving us all in shock, I felt a mix of anger and devastation wash over me. The wedding ceremony had been ruined, but I refused to let them have the last word. My heart hardened. I would not let this humiliation define me. It was time to take a stand against the Brooks family and show them that I was more than just a dishwasher. I was determined to reclaim my dignity, no matter the cost. After the disaster that was my wedding day, everything felt shattered. Ethan and I had to pick up the pieces of our relationship, but I could sense a change in him. The humiliation of what happened lingered in the air between us, and though we tried to move forward, it wasn't easy. That night, as we returned home, I could see the worry etched on Ethan's face. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I never thought they would show up like that," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "It's not your fault," I replied, though my heart ached with embarrassment. "But I can't just forget what happened. They think I'm nothing because of my job and background." Ethan took my hands, his grip firm. "You are so much more than that. I love you for who you are, not what you do. We'll figure this out together." Despite his reassurance, I couldn't shake the anger bubbling inside me. I had been pushed to the ground in front of everyone, and my dignity had been stripped away. I needed to do something. I needed to make them pay for the way they treated me. In the days following the wedding, I reached out to Mason Grant, an old friend from law school. He had always been supportive of my ambitions, and I knew he would understand the fire burning within me. "Anna, it's been too long," Mason said when we met at a coffee shop. "What's going on? You look like you've been through a war." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Mason, I need your help. Ethan's parents publicly humiliated me at our wedding. I want to expose their hypocrisy. I want to show everyone who they really are." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" I explained my plan to investigate Henry and Catherine's import-export business. I had heard whispers of shady dealings, but I needed concrete evidence. "I want to show the world that their wealth comes from illegal activities," I said, my determination shining through. Mason nodded, his expression serious. "I can help with that. Let's gather some information and see what we can find." For weeks, we dug into the Brooks family's business. I spent my evenings researching and compiling data while Mason made connections in the industry. We discovered that the Brooks business was not as pristine as they claimed. Rumors of unregistered exports and tax evasion circulated, but we needed proof. One afternoon, while going through public records, Mason stumbled upon a critical piece of information. "Anna, look at this," he exclaimed, pointing to his laptop screen. "They've been under investigation for potential tax fraud. If we can gather enough evidence, we could bring them down." Excitement and fear flooded my veins. "This is it, Mason. We have to dig deeper." As we continued our investigation, I felt a sense of empowerment growing within me. I was no longer the shy girl working at a diner. I was a woman on a mission, determined to reclaim my dignity and fight back against the prejudice I faced. Each piece of evidence we collected became a stepping stone towards justice. Meanwhile, Ethan was supportive but worried about the risks. "Anna, I love your passion, but are you sure you want to do this? It could blow up in your face," he cautioned one evening. "I have to do this, Ethan. I can't let them get away with treating me like I'm worthless," I replied, my voice steady. He nodded, though I could see the concern in his eyes. "Just be careful. I don't want to lose you in this fight." Weeks turned into months as we meticulously built our case against the Brooks family. I pored over documents, analyzed financial records, and even interviewed former employees who had left under suspicious circumstances. With every new piece of information, my resolve strengthened. I felt like a warrior preparing for battle. Then, just when I thought we had enough evidence to act, we hit a snag. Mason called me one night, his voice tense. "Anna, I just heard some unsettling news. The Brooks family is aware that someone is digging into their business. They're not going to let this go quietly." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "They've been looking for information about you. They might try to intimidate you, or worse, he warned. Fear gripped me, but I refused to back down. Let them come. I won't be scared into silence. As the days passed, I realized that the fight wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about standing up for myself, proving my worth, and showing the world that I wouldn't be a victim. I had risen from being a dishwasher to someone who could take on powerful adversaries. And with Ethan by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. But I knew we were entering dangerous territory. The Brooks family was powerful, and I was just a woman with a dream. Little did I know, the confrontation that awaited me would change everything. The tension in the air was palpable as Mason and I prepared to take the next step against the Brooks family. We had gathered substantial evidence against Henry and Catherine's import-export business, but I knew we needed to act carefully. The stakes were high, and I could feel the weight of our plan bearing down on me. Anna, are you sure you're ready for this? Mason asked one evening as we sat in my small apartment, documents sprawled across the table like a battlefield map. I have to be, I replied, my determination unwavering. I won't let them continue to ruin lives with their illegal dealings. It's time to expose them for who they really are. Mason nodded, though his brow furrowed with concern. Okay, let's make sure we have everything in place. Once we go public, there's no turning back. With our plan set, we decided to approach a local news station that had a reputation for investigative reporting. We met with Samantha Reed, a seasoned journalist known for her fierce dedication to uncovering the truth. As we sat in a small conference room, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Tell me everything, Samantha said, her pen poised above her notepad. I took a deep breath and began recounting the events leading up to our investigation, the humiliation at my wedding, the Brooks family's disdain for my background, and our discoveries about their illegal operations. I shared every detail, showing her the evidence we had collected, financial records, testimonies from former employees, and the research Mason had painstakingly compiled. Samantha listened intently, her eyes widening as the pieces fell into place. This is serious, she said, her voice steady. If what you say is true, I can help you expose them. We'll set up a detailed report and get this story out to the public. A surge of adrenaline coursed through me. For the first time since the wedding disaster, I felt empowered. With Samantha's help, we would reveal the truth, not just for my sake, but for all the people who had suffered under the Brooks family's shady dealings. Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly with the news station. The closer we got to the story breaking, the more I could sense the Brooks family's looming threat. My phone buzzed with notifications about new rumors spreading online, tales of my so-called gold-digging past resurfacing as if to undermine my credibility. Anna, they're trying to discredit you, Mason said one day, looking concerned as he scrolled through social media. We need to be ready for backlash. I'm not going to let them intimidate me, I replied firmly. This fight is about more than just us now. It's about showing everyone that they can't get away with this. The day finally arrived when Samantha's report was set to air. I sat in my living room, heart racing as I watched the news. The screen flickered to life, and there was Samantha, poised and professional. Tonight, we expose a local family accused of illegal activities in their business dealings, she announced, and my heart leaped. As she detailed our findings, I felt a mixture of pride and fear. This was it. We were pulling back the curtain on the Brooks family, shining a light on their dark secrets. But then, just as I thought I was ready for anything, the phone rang. It was Ethan. Anna, you need to come home right now. It's urgent, he said, his voice strained. What's wrong? I asked, panic rising in my chest. Just come home. Please, he urged. I rushed back to our apartment, fear coursing through me. As I entered, I found Ethan pacing, his face pale. What's going on? I demanded. It's about my parents, he said, running a hand through his hair. They've been watching you. They're furious about the report. Before I could respond, there was a loud knock on the door. My heart raced as I exchanged worried glances with Ethan. Who is it? I called out, my voice shaking. It's the police, came a voice from the other side. We need to speak with you. Suddenly, All my fears coalesced into a single thought. The Brooks family wouldn't let this go without a fight. As I opened the door, I braced myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold, knowing that the battle was far from over. As I opened the door, 2 police officers stood before me, their expressions serious. "Ms. Walker," one of them asked, "we need to discuss some allegations related to your investigation into the Brooks family." Ethan stepped forward, concern etched on his face. "What kind of allegations?" he demanded. "Can we come inside?" the officer replied, glancing at the hallway. I nodded, heart racing as I led them into our living room. The weight of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We received an anonymous tip claiming that you and your friend may have fabricated evidence against the Brooks family," the officer explained, watching my reaction closely. I felt a surge of anger. "That's absurd. Everything we've uncovered is legitimate. We've been following the law, and we have evidence to prove it." The officer raised a hand. "We're not accusing you of anything yet, but we need to verify the claims. We'd like to see the evidence you've gathered." Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with worry. "Anna, they're trying to turn this around on you. They're scared." I took a deep breath, channeling my determination. "I won't let them intimidate us. They may have power and money, but I have the truth on my side." After the officers left, I turned to Ethan, whose anxiety mirrored my own. "We can't back down now. We need to gather our evidence and be prepared for anything." We spent the next few days compiling every document, testimony, and piece of information we had gathered. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, threats from anonymous accounts attempting to intimidate me further. I refused to let fear take hold. Finally, the day arrived when the police returned for our evidence. We presented everything meticulously, showing them financial records, testimonies from former employees, and documentation of their illegal dealings. With each piece of evidence, I could feel my heart racing, a mixture of dread and determination. After reviewing the files, the officers left with a promise to investigate the claims against the Brooks family thoroughly. I knew we had taken a crucial step, but the battle wasn't over. The Brooks family was still powerful, and I needed to be ready for their retaliation. That night, I called Mason. "I need your help. I feel like they're going to strike back soon," I confessed. "We'll stay ahead of them." "You're not alone in this fight," Mason assured me. His support was a reminder that I had allies who believed in me. The following weeks felt like a tense waiting game. Then, out of the blue, a breakthrough came. Samantha reached out to tell me that her investigation had gained traction. The news of the police investigation into the Brooks family had leaked, and suddenly, their empire was under scrutiny. As the media began to cover the story, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. People began to rally behind me, voicing their support on social media, sharing their own stories of struggle against injustice. I was no longer just a victim. I was a symbol of resilience. In the end, the Brooks family was called to answer for their actions. Henry and Catherine were arrested on multiple charges, including tax fraud and illegal exports. As news of their downfall spread, I felt a sense of justice wash over me. I had fought back against the prejudices and betrayals that had tried to define me. Through it all, Ethan stood by my side, stronger than ever. "You did this, Anna. You stood up and fought for what was right," he said one evening, pulling me close. "Together," I replied, knowing that love and support had been the foundation of my strength. I had gone from being a dishwasher to someone who took on powerful adversaries. I had not only reclaimed my dignity, but also carved a path for my future. I graduated law school with honors and began working as an advocate for others who faced similar injustices. As I stood at the podium during my graduation ceremony, delivering a speech about resilience and justice, I knew my journey was just beginning. The fight against societal prejudice wasn't over, but I was ready to face it head-on, proving that one's worth isn't determined by background or wealth, but by integrity, loyalty, and the courage to stand up for oneself. And so, my story continues, with hope, strength, and the unwavering belief that love can conquer even the darkest of challenges.
This happened right after I bought a house with a garden. Both my husband, Kevin, and my mother-in-law, Dorothy, declared their intention to move in with me, grinning mischievously. Mom and I are moving into the new house too.
If you don't like it, I'll just have my son divorce you.
Dorothy's coming, so of course my terrible sister-in-law will come along too. They knew I wouldn't like it, but still went through with it. I shuddered at the thought of the daily harassment continuing even after moving. No, I don't intend to live together there.
What? Know your boundaries.
Dorothy raised her eyebrows. What she pulled out was a divorce form already signed by my husband. Her face said she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house. It was scary how well her plan worked. I had to suppress my laughter desperately. I wonder how scared I looked with my head down trembling while Dorothy looked so proud. I quietly signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left their house. It was on the day of the move that I received a relentless call from Dorothy. She finally realized, huh? Dorothy demanded a meeting to talk. This was just what I wanted. I would meet her and end it with my own hands. After careful preparation to punish them, I headed to the battlefield. My name is Tracy. I work as an office worker at an advertising agency. It was the chief at a newspaper company who introduced me to Kevin. I was in a tough spot, so I couldn't say no to my chief. I ended up marrying Kevin after dating for 6 months at 29. I'll regret this decision for ages. I think Dorothy, Kevin's mom, intended to deceive me from the beginning. She seemed gentle and kind, but once I married into the family, she completely changed her attitude, and she showed her true self as a terrible mother-in-law.
Hey, Tracy, what are you dawdling for? When you're done with the dishes, go out and start weeding the garden just like I mentioned earlier.
There was not a day at my in-laws' house without Dorothy's shrill voice echoing. Every day was rough for me, and all I could do was reply with a sigh. After getting married, I was asked by my husband to live with his parents. His dad had passed away due to illness, and his mom had been suffering from leg pain for many years. He was really begging me because he didn't want to leave his mom all alone in their old house. But Dorothy was actually walking around like nothing was wrong. She insisted that educating her daughter-in-law was a mother-in-law's duty. It was harsh to me every day. Kevin, too, was no better. Even when I wished to live separately, he would only make excuses to avoid it. He's always under his mom's thumb. He never stood up for me when Dorothy was being annoying to me. Sorry. My mom's pretty harsh, you know? Stop laughing and help me. I'm really suffering here. Ever since we tied the knot, I've been feeling really anxious and depressed. Sometimes I just start crying out of nowhere or feel sick for no reason. I got checked by a specialist. Turns out it's an adjustment disorder. I was really bothered by how living at my in-laws was affecting me. Dorothy was relentless with her tough requests, not caring about my feelings.
Don't be lazy just because it's your day off. Have you finished cleaning the room? Haven't you done the shopping yet? Check the discount stores before you go.
Please wait, Dorothy. Please don't rush me. I have a headache. I'll make sure to finish the cleaning and shopping later.
Don't talk nonsense. If you're told to do something, do it right away. You're my son's wife, aren't you?
I wanted to argue back that me being a daughter-in-law doesn't mean that I'm a maid. Most of the demands from Dorothy were about the house itself. Clean the gutters, replace the curtain, fix the splinters on the pillars. My in-laws' house was very old and falling apart. It creaked with every wind. Each time Dorothy would urge my husband,
Please just hurry up and get a new house. This is actually a rental house. We're renting it cheap from an acquaintance. Wouldn't it be nice to live freely in our own house for once? Kevin, you agree, right?
I do think so. But with my salary, it's impossible. A house of our own is just a dream. The son who can't do anything right made Dorothy mad. So now, as his wife, she's giving me a hard time. Cook, clean, weed the garden, take her to the doctor. I was exhausted from working full time, but Dorothy and my husband didn't show any concern. And that's why I got stuck with an adjustment disorder. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, this person moved in 6 months after me at my in-laws' house. Hillary, my sister-in-law, came back divorced with her child. She had been kicked out after being told, "I never want to see your face again."
Well, it's my fault. I neglected my kid and slept with my husband's boss.
What kind of moral sense does this woman have? Seeing me disgusted, Hillary smirked. Just like her mother, Hillary did nothing around the house and even had me clean her room.
Can't help it, right? I'm raising my kid. You wouldn't understand if you haven't had one. But it's tougher than it looks. So, Tracy, I'm counting on your support.
Hillary doesn't work. She just lounges around all day. Caring for her child is just an afterthought. She spends her time relaxing on the sofa, being lazy. Her behavior is especially bad on weekends. She leaves her daughter with me and goes to the casino. Hillary, the troublemaker, seems to hang out with a sketchy crowd and they drink together in the afternoon. It would be nice if she helped with the housework even a little, but she really does nothing. She's the kind of woman who would do anything to get money for fun. Here's what happened one day. Hillary handed me a pouch, and when I asked what it was for,
"That's our dad's. Cufflinks, rings, and a vintage lighter are in it."
What? What am I supposed to do with this?
You're so clueless. Go and sell it. And make sure you sell it for as much as possible, okay?
All these things used to belong to her dad who passed away. They're all special things to remember him by. It made me sad when my sister-in-law wanted to sell them like it was no big deal. Thinking that she would use the money from selling them to go gambling made me feel even more helpless. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, so I explained the situation and dumped the whole pouch on my husband. What he did with my father-in-law's things after that, I don't know. And frankly, I don't want to know. Many things happened when Hillary first returned. My belongings started to go missing after Hillary arrived. I also think it was around that time that I learned my husband might be cheating. A friend who works at a different advertising agency happened to see him on a weekend. She saw my husband walking arm in arm with a young woman. When I heard about it, I was furious. I'm busy working from morning to night, even on my days off, and you're out having fun with a young woman? That's unacceptable. It's cheating, isn't it? Who is she? Tell me the truth. No, I wasn't cheating. She's just a girl from a brothel. Excuse me? You shouldn't be going to brothels when you're married, should you? Hillary saw us arguing and burst out laughing. As for Dorothy, she looked dismayed, but didn't strongly reprimand my husband. According to her, if a husband visits such places, it means his wife isn't devoted enough.
Getting worked up over something like this is embarrassing. The fault is yours, really. It's because of you, his wife, don't devote enough to Kevin that things like this happen.
I don't think so. Dorothy, isn't that a bit unreasonable?
In this house, that's common sense. Besides, going to brothels or cheating is just what guys do. And as his wife, it's your duty to forgive him with a generous heart, you useless wife.
It seems my common sense is nonsense to them. Forgive Kevin for visiting brothels or cheating on me? I couldn't possibly do that. My irritation only grew. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. To change this unpleasant situation, I decided to take action. Even after that, Dorothy and Hillary remained the same. Day after day, they treated me like a servant, lying on the sofa or the floor like sloths. They would raise their voices when hungry.
Hey, why isn't lunch ready yet? It's already noon. Don't dawdle, okay? Tracy, you're so slow, it's annoying.
Then why don't you make it yourselves? I'm constantly on the move, doing garden work, cleaning rooms, shopping, without a moment to rest, you know.
Don't talk back like that. Know your place.
It seems I'm not even allowed to voice my opinion. That's it. I'm done. I wanted to get a divorce as soon as possible. But if things were that easy, I wouldn't be suffering. It was my chief at the newspaper company, whom I owe a lot, who introduced me to my husband. My chief also asked me not to do anything that would embarrass him. Annoyingly, Dorothy knows this very well and often brings it up. I'm completely stuck with this situation. For a while, all I could do was endure. Then one day, my husband's infidelity became an undeniable fact. My friend from a different company found some clear evidence. That prepared the first stage of my plan. Now I had to make the next move. I think about a month had passed when Hillary spread out a housing catalog on the dinner table after we finished eating. It was unmistakably the one I kept in my bag.
Look at this. It seems like Tracy was planning to buy a house.
Wait, did you rummage through my bag? Why would you do that?
Just be quiet. Wow, it's a bit in the countryside, but it's a nice house, isn't it?
Tracy, you should consult me about this kind of thing.
The house I had my eye on was a detached house with a garden. As Dorothy said, it's in the countryside, but it looks quite nice. I had already visited the site several times and met with a real estate agent. When I honestly confessed about it, the three of them really took an interest.
What? You've already gotten that far in the discussions? You're buying it? It's cheap and spacious, not bad. Kevin, it takes guts for a man.
What? But, a house with a garden. It's tempting.
If you're going to own a house, then I'll support you. I'll even help out a little. Don't you want to move out and live there together with Tracy?
Dorothy was pushing my husband to do something he didn't need to. She's such a hypocrite. She has no intention of letting me go that easily. When I asked whose name the house would be in, my husband frowned.
I'm the head of the family, right? It will be in my name, of course.
Then, is it okay to proceed? We'll buy this house and move out. Just the two of us.
Okay, I understand. I'm a man too. We'll buy the house. Hurry up and proceed with the discussions.
Finally, my husband clearly says so. Dorothy and Hillary both praised him, but I saw what they were doing. They glanced at each other and cracked up. A few days later, just after purchasing a country house with a garden as planned, my husband and Dorothy, both grinning, declared their intent to move in with me.
Mom and I are moving in.
What? But we were supposed to live, just the two of us in this house.
After thinking it over, we've decided to live together after all. You wouldn't say no, would you? If you do, I'll make my son divorce you. I wonder what your chief would say.
There it was. What a despicable tactic. If Dorothy was coming, Hillary would surely come along. Thinking of the daily harassment that would continue even after moving, I shuddered. Absolutely not. I have no intention whatsoever of living with you there.
What? What are you saying? Don't you understand your situation?
Dorothy was angry, her eyebrows raised. What she took out was a divorce form, already signed by my husband. Her face said that she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house.
If you really hate it that much, here, sign this.
Yes, I will sign. I'll go ahead with the divorce. I've had enough.
What? Hey, Tracy, are you really okay with this?
Kevin, let her be. Living with such a snotty and useless woman would only upset you.
You're young. You'll find another wife soon enough. That was a terrible thing to say. I signed the divorce papers. Dorothy was triumphant, oblivious to how I felt. It was scary how well her plan worked. I had to desperately hold back my laughter. A few days after I moved to a new apartment, I got several calls from Dorothy. Checking the calendar, it was as I thought. Today was their moving day. She finally realized, huh? The ringing wouldn't stop, calling me non-stop. How typical of Dorothy. Even though I ignored it, she kept calling, so I finally answered. She started yelling without even a greeting.
You! What have you done? What kind of property have you trapped us with?
It's been a while, Dorothy. Please, calm down. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb. It's about this house. You knew it was a defective house when you bought it, didn't you? It must be so. It has to be.
Indeed, the house I chose had issues. The ground itself was weak, and the land often sank. Even if it was a new construction, doors would stop closing after a few years. Apparently there's a mine tunnel for coal mining around here that's causing all the issues, but the locals already knew about it and built their house on safe ground. It's only the clueless new folks moving in who are dealing with the issues. I trapped those 3 by using a problematic house this time. It was hard work coordinating with a real estate agent to find a reasonably priced defective house. I set it up so that Hillary would swipe the real estate catalog from my bag. I made sure to leave my bag out where she could easily grab it. Unaware of this, the 3 of them fell right into the trap and moved. It was hard to keep from laughing when signing the divorce papers. I wanted to tell them everything, but I couldn't do that. I pretended I didn't know. A defective house? That can't be right. Isn't there some mistake?
What's with that tone? How insincere. Anyway, come over here a bit.
What? No. Honestly, I never want to see you all again.
What? What did you say?
I had no desire to meet a family of monsters that didn't understand common sense. Even if they offered me money, I'd refuse. And then Kevin spoke up.
Come on, Tracy, please. Just think about our feelings for a bit.
I'll return those words to you, Kevin. Have you ever considered my feelings, even a little? You haven't, right? You never stood up for me, right?
I'm sorry. I'll apologize. Hey, where are you? Tell me where you moved.
As if I'd tell you? If you showed up, I'd have to move again. Anyway, I want to cut ties with you all. The conversation went nowhere. Eventually, Dorothy started making even more unreasonable claims. She said the divorce was invalid and that we were still family. Impossible. I submitted those divorce papers. How unreasonable can these people be?
Anyway, let's just meet once to talk. We're getting nowhere. Come on.
I'm also begging you, Tracy. Just once. Let's settle this there, okay?
Dorothy and Kevin were insistent on meeting to talk. Even if I refused, they would surely call again. With no other choice, I decided to meet and deal with them once and for all. Fine, we can meet up just once.
Thanks, I owe you one.
But I'll choose the time and place, okay? I didn't want to risk being ambushed or followed. If I don't gain the upper hand even a little, the future will be terrifying. After thorough preparations, I called the 3 of them to a cafe. I arrived 20 minutes late to the cafe I had specified. Dorothy and Hillary, who had been waiting, were already furious. Kevin had a wry smile. They were just as I had expected.
How dare you make us wait? You're really out of line.
I don't even want to hear that. What do you want?
What is that attitude? It's infuriating. Because of you, we ended up with a defective house and it's causing us trouble. You need to take responsibility.
That's why I'm telling you. I didn't know anything about that. It was you who started talking about moving in together, right? Dorothy was at a loss for words. She couldn't deny it. She and Hillary had jumped into the defective house themselves. Apparently, the previous residence was undergoing renovation by the owner. In other words, they had nowhere to stay but that defective house. If you're done with your part, then let me speak. Dorothy, I will be suing you for damages and will file a lawsuit. Be prepared.
What? Damages? A lawsuit? Why would it come to this? I can't accept this. What have I done to you? Prove it.
You caused me mental distress, to the point of developing an adjustment disorder. I showed them a copy of the medical certificate I received from the hospital. All 3 stared intently at it. Dorothy's eyes were particularly wide. She probably never thought I was seeing a psychiatrist. You never thought about how much your verbal abuse could hurt someone, did you? I suffered a lot. I felt nauseous and cried. It was really tough.
That's because you're weak. It was all because you were a terrible daughter-in-law to begin with, wasn't it? Isn't that right?
That too. Do you realize that calling me a terrible daughter-in-law is actually considered insulting and can be a crime? You could be punished with imprisonment for up to a year or a fine of up to $3,000.
What? It's not that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal? Dorothy really doesn't understand anything, huh? She's been really sinful. It's not okay to be mean and hurt others with words. There's more that could subject you to criminal penalties. Dorothy, you threatened me several times by saying you would talk to my chief about the divorce, right? That's a crime of intimidation.
Just a minute. Are you being a bit too dramatic?
I'm not being dramatic. By the way, the statutory penalty for intimidation is imprisonment for up to 2 years or a fine of up to $3,000. I won't back down, you know.
But wait a minute.
Hillary cut in. Her gaze was sharper than usual. You could say she had the look of a former delinquent. A face that said she wouldn't be intimidated.
Listening to you, it sounds like you're taking advantage of Mom's ignorance and scaring her. Do you even have any proof that you were insulted or threatened?
Yes, I do, because I've been recording all along.
What? Recording?
Yes, I had the voice memo function on my smartphone activated all throughout my time at my ex-in-law's house. And that's quite a bit of audio recording. I've also prepared data extracted just from the parts where I was verbally abused by Dorothy. If I submit that as evidence, the crimes of insult and intimidation will almost certainly be confirmed. Did you think I would just sit back and take it? It's not just you, Dorothy. Hillary, you too. You'll likely be held accountable.
What? Why? What did I do to you?
Take a moment to think. Didn't you commit a crime? Or are you saying you didn't do anything to upset me?
There's no way I did anything to upset you. Don't mock me.
Hillary insists she's innocent. I showed her the screen of my smartphone. Suddenly her face turned pale. It's not surprising she turned pale. What was shown was her rummaging through my bag, the disgraceful sight of her snooping around my things.
What is that? Why? When did you even take that?
Ever since you arrived, my belongings have often gone missing. My makeup, accessories, clothes, bags. So I set up a hidden camera.
That's terrible. How dare you act on your own when you're just Kevin's wife?
I'm appalled. Who's acting on their own? Let me tell you about the statutory penalty for theft. Imprisonment for up to 10 years or a fine of up to $5,000. I'll contact the police later. Hillary was gaping, wanting to say something but unable to. She looked utterly helpless. I have a record of everything that has gone missing from my possessions. The actual extent of the damage is well documented, making it easier for the police and lawyers to act. When it comes to action, I go all out. I had decided that I would never forgive these three. And finally on to Kevin. He shrugged when I glared at him. If we're talking about the degree of unforgiveness, he's the one I can't forgive the most. I thought marriage was about helping each other. But Kevin, it seems you had a different idea, didn't you? From the beginning to the end, you were always against me, weren't you?
Wait, what? I didn't mean that at all. Seriously, trust me. I was just trying to help out today, you know?
Yes, I've had enough of lies. I don't need your mediation. Kevin is a wimp who only thinks about himself, always trying to side with the stronger party, just as he has always been on the side of his mother and sister before. And even now, trying somehow to get on my good side, hoping to be the only one forgiven. If he had been a more decent man, I might have continued our marriage. If he had said we should live alone in another place, I might have done just that. The name of the person you cheated with seems to be Mandy Smith.
What? How?
How do I know? I had someone check for me. I have a friend who's good at that sort of thing. I even have a photo of you and Miss Smith entering a hotel together. Here, look.
Whoa, no need to show me.
As I attempted to show him the screen of my smartphone, my ex-husband quickly blocked it. He probably didn't want his mother and sister to see the evidence of his affair. It shouldn't matter to them. Morals and ethics are already broken among all three of them. They are that kind of family. I put my smartphone and the copy of the diagnosis back in my bag. There's no need to show any more evidence from my side. Dorothy, Kevin, and Hillary all seemed to have lost their will to fight. They know they could be reported if they mess up. They seem frightened. Unfortunately, I was fully intent on consulting the police regardless of whether they did anything. I think the police will be visiting you eventually. It's better not to run. Your crimes might become more severe. Also, make sure you don't contact me. Got it?
Tracy, don't be so cold. Were we married until just recently?
Yes, we were. Honestly, I think marrying you was a huge mistake. I feel relieved now that we're not married. If you follow me, I'll sue you for that as well, so be prepared. Don't wait for me in front of my workplace. Don't contact me unless absolutely necessary. I made a few simple promises like that with the three of them and left the cafe. They remained looking down even after I left the cafe. You can't stop people from gossiping. Word about my ex-husband's divorce spread like wildfire at his job. Word got out that he was cheating and treating his wife badly. Now his coworkers are starting to ignore him. After all, Kevin and I were introduced through a department head of a newspaper company we dealt with. It was unnatural for my ex-husband to be viewed harshly after losing their trust. Unable to bear the hostile environment, he eventually quit. His last job did not go well, and his relationship with his mother and sister began to go bad. He reappeared in front of me about a year after our divorce. I was stopped on my way home from work, and there stood a shabby man. Kevin? I didn't recognize you for a second.
I guess. People tell me I've changed a lot recently.
He seemed to be struggling, and that wasn't surprising. Both Dorothy and Hillary were fined after their guilt was confirmed. I had demanded damages from Kevin too. They must be financially struggling now. They still have to pay the mortgage for the defective house they live in, so it must be quite difficult. How are your mom and Hillary doing?
They're alive, but barely. Both are working now. They have to or they can't eat. They always say they want to go back to how things were.
They want to go back to living off what you and I earned? Sounds just like them. They're just like parasites. I'm truly glad I cut ties. I thought he might say something in return, but he didn't. Instead, my ex-husband let out a big sigh and apologized to me.
I really regret everything. I'm sincerely reflecting on it. I was a fool. Like you said, I should have been on your side all along. I must have been out of my mind.
I think your family has always been out of their minds.
Don't say such cold things. Please, let's live together again. I'll cut ties with that family for good. I'm serious. You're all I have.
Oh, that's too bad. I already have someone else. I don't need you, and even if I didn't have a partner, I would never consider getting back together. When I firmly said that, Kevin collapsed to his knees. But there's no way I would fall for such a performance now. If I was a terrible person, I probably would have spat on him right there. I left my ex-husband behind and went home. After that, he never contacted me again. The real estate agent who had helped me informed me of this. Dorothy, Kevin, and Hillary's lives turned into a real mess after that. They were angry at each other for how bad things were at home, and it just made things between them even more strained. Sounds of arguing and breaking glass could be heard from their house every night. They were always insulting and annoying each other, but they couldn't go their separate ways. It was like being in hell. They're pretty much on their own in their neighborhood, and nobody wants anything to do with them. So they'll likely sell their house for next to nothing and end up with no place to live and a bunch of debt. In my mind, I can clearly see the three of them huddled together under the cold sky, cursing each other. Someday I'd like to see with my own eyes just how miserable they've become. Meanwhile, I am living a surprisingly happy life. It's all thanks to my new partner. He's a skilled salesman working for a major trading company, a mature man who can respect others' values and has a calm disposition. He's also divorced, just like me. Soon we plan to have a nice little ceremony. My first marriage was a total nightmare. Sometimes I get really emotional thinking about how much it hurt back then. But even so, when I'm with him, my heart just fills up with warmth. This is where I truly belong. It's been a long journey, but I finally arrived. That's how I feel. I've been through some tough stuff, but it's made me want to be more understanding towards others. I'm looking to live a happy and fulfilling life, taking my experiences as lessons. That's how I'm feeling right now.